Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we are going to talk about cannon fodder. But before we get into the game, we have one more Christmas memory. You know, Christmas, the season is still among us. And we have a Christmas memory that's a little bit late, but was
it's Christmas
submitted.
and it's Christmas until after New Year.
Right. And so Dreamcatcher sent in his favorite Amiga Christmas memory. And it is about the Click Video magazine. Are you familiar with this?
No. I've not heard of that.
So this is a 90s computer game magazine, which was delivered in VHS format.
Really?
Yeah.
In the UK or?
Yeah. So this was.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this was in the UK.
All right.
And his memory says, kids would scoff at how ridiculous the idea is now, but this was way before anyone had even dreamt YouTube would ever become a reality. I was on my way to my uncle's mansion in the country with my brother and parents for the annual Christmas visit when we stopped off at the motorway service station. I was grumpy because I knew it was going to be a tedious affair and I'd be gameless all night because the trusty Amiga 500 wouldn't fit in my pocket. I spotted this new gaming fix on the newsagent shelves and it saved the day. I even got to watch it on the big telly in the living room, something which would have never happened at home. Looking back, it's truly awful viewing, but my expectations were rock bottom in those primitive pre-internet days, and this featured moving Amiga games in a magazine, well, of sorts, with no computer in sight. My tiny mind short-circuited. And, you know, I was thinking, whenever I would see video games, you know, on TV in any context, I would automatically go berserk, you know, as a young lad.
Yeah.
Nintendo used to send out these VHS copies of things to people that subscribed to Nintendo Power, and I used to watch those over and over again. So he was right. Expectations were lower in those pre-internet days.
I think it's neat to have a video magazine. That probably would have been awesome. I know I used to see, I mentioned this before, but when I first saw Dragon's Lair, it was on like Entertainment Tonight. It was, and they did a thing on Zaxxon on there one time. I was like, oh, look at that, video games are on the TV. You know, they must be important. So yeah, I can dig it. And a monthly magazine like that'd be cool. I'd like to have had something like that.
Yeah, of course you've got the ultimate in VHS gaming. You've got an Action Max, don't you?
I do. I do have the It's the only video game system that's real video.
Right.
All right. But yeah. All that aside, it's don't buy an Action Max. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's it's been a pretty quiet news week here in Amiga land. I don't have anything else to report other than I did spend a large part of my day yesterday setting up a new emulation solution with the help of a link that Aaron shared with me. I think the name of the site is The Cake Is a Lie Gaming, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Yeah, and but that was a really, I won't say easy because emulation on the Amiga is never easy, but it was a step-by-step guide on how to set up a good emulation solution with WHD load and all that stuff. And so
that reminds me, that's news right there. WHD load is now, you don't have to register it anymore. No more nag screens. So if anyone's using this on their actual factual Amiga, it's a glorious day.
Now, I noticed that when I loaded it up yesterday, but did you read any kind of a press release or anything? Why?
I've not. I've read people talking about it. I know it's something that's apparently here to stay. Now they're still taking donations. What? If anything ever deserved donations, that if you use this, you should probably donate to them because it's an outstanding. It's a lifesaver for the Amiga community. And even if you don't use an Amiga, an actual Amiga, it's baked into a lot of stuff now, emulation wise, and like the Xbox is going to use and some other stuff. So this is something that's outstanding. But for them to do that was a remarkable Christmas gift. I use it every time I load something, and I sit through the nag screen every time because I'm one of these guys that's late to the date, and I'm going to pay him eventually. But honestly, I'm going to send these guys a couple bucks, and I thought that what they did was it was gutsy. I hope this doesn't mean that the program is ending or the work on it because they are perpetually upgrading. And it's not just there's a committee of people working on this thing tirelessly, working on getting stuff to work under it. So this is big news. Again, if you have an Amiga, if you have a compact flash card, and you're not using this, for God's sakes, look it up because it's great. And if you are using it, give these guys a couple bucks. Show them that their gesture is appreciated.
Speaking of real Amigas, you have some new news on that front, don't you?
Yes, I finally. Oh, folks, I had to break down and buy the 520 video adapter for the Amiga 500. I've had waiting for both. I just have not had much luck repairing my Amiga monitor, and so I thought, well, let's just get the ball rolling on this thing. So at some point in the very near future, we're going to hook this thing up with the 520 with my wacky PC converted power supply. It's going to be wacky. We're hoping it all works, and Boat will not have to use his emulators anymore. He'll be off the schneid. He can have a proper Amiga and a crate of discs that I provided him a couple months back.
So look forward to a video of that, and it's going to be a glorious day. The last little bit of news I have is that after a couple people requested our presence there or asked if we had an account, the Amigos are now on Twitter.
Oh,
so you can follow us at Amigos Podcast. Our first tweet was a picture of my 1200 XL over there.
I saw that,
and but soon it's going to be going into storage, and we'll make way for the 500. What's the timetable on that? You think we're going to be able to get that going? I mean, now that you've got the monitor,
it's all. I've got it all ready to go.
It's all okay. So
it's untested.
All right.
So
that's the best kind of videos.
So let me just to recap, folks. We've got a 500 that my cat knocked off the top of a bookcase and did a up and over, and the cover broke. We've got a power supply from an incredibly old AT computer that hasn't been tested for years. I brought a backup one that hasn't also been tested for years and also needs the wires respliced. We have the untested Amiga 520 that I bought off eBay from a fellow. All this put together in one nice package. I don't know how much RAM the 500's got, and I don't know what Kickstart version is on it. I think it's 3.0, but it could be 3.1. Hey, it'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll all work. If it all works, everything comes on, then we can work our way up from there. So step one, make sure nothing explodes. But we'll definitely shoot a video for this. This should be our greatest adventure ever.
Absolutely. And you can always find our YouTube channel if you don't already know about it. It is youtube.com/Amigos Podcast. We throw everything up there.
Yeah, we love it. We're social media guides. We're everywhere.
Now that we're done with the news, we're going to talk about our game of the week. Our game of the week this week is Sensible Software's Cannon Fodder. So Aaron's got some information about the details.
Well, Cannon Fodder was released in '93. Like Boat said, by Sensible Soccer or Sensible Software. That shows you what they're known for, right? It was distributed by Virgin Interactive. Virgin Interactive is I don't know if they're still around, if Virgin Interactive still exists, but at the time they were obviously a subsidiary of Virgin. The Amiga stuff that they released of any consequence, I looked over the list. Beneath a Steel Sky, obviously a legendary game. All the Cannon Fodders. They released the Mortal Kombat or distributed Mortal Kombat for the Amiga.
Really?
Oh yes,
that's interesting.
It is quite it's interesting. All right. Hope you like swapping and one button Mortal Kombat. Sensible Golf, that was they distributed that in a game called Overlord, which I actually own Overlord.
Oh, cool.
Believe it or not. Of course, developed by Sensible Software. They were known, of course, Sensible Soccer, Sensible Golf, Megalomania. Some stuff I didn't realize. And of course, the Cannon Fodder series. They also did the Shoot 'em Up construction set, which I don't know if you remember that.
No.
I think that was a C64 game.
Oh, actually, now that I think about it, I think I did read about that in Retro Gamer. They did a feature on all the different kind of game creators that came out on the 8-bit systems.
Yeah, you had Shoot 'em Up construction set. You had Pinball construction set. You had Gary Kitchen's what was it, Adventure Maker? I think that's what it was called.
They had a couple. There was one called the Quill or something like that.
Yeah,
it was a text adventure.
Always,
creator.
whenever I got these, mix it yourself type deals, it's very exciting. And then after I tried to make one, and it was hard, I always gave up.
It reminds you that making games is hard.
Yes, absolutely. Sensible Software is kind of an interesting group. Looking over what they did. They formed in 1986, and it was two school buddies, John Hare and Chris Yates. Now, if you look down the credits of Cannon Fodder, John Hare is listed as one of the musicians. He also performed the title track to this. Very catchy tune.
Oh yeah,
at the beginning of it. But him and this other fella, and eventually they were in '88. They were joined by a guy named Martin Galway. He only stood around for a couple years before he left for Origin. They did a lot of good games. They had a lot of hits. They were very popular. They were sort of known for their little tiny men
on
the screen.
That's right.
I thought, excuse me. I thought it was interesting that I read that this game, Cannon Fodder, was based on the Sensible Soccer engine.
I mean, if you look at they both have little tiny guys. So.
Right. Sensible Software was around for a good while. They developed a lot of stuff that people know. Like I said, they did Sensible Soccer, Sensible Golf, Megalomania, which is another game I'd heard, much like this one. I'd heard about this game, but I never actually played it. They had a string of hits. They did their own conversions, as far as I could tell, to Genesis, and Cannon Fodder was released on a lot of different systems. It had and one thing I like about it had a 3DO release and a Jaguar release. Now that is unusual.
Yeah.
To see. So it was out. It was right now at Wheelhouse. It had a CD32 release. DOS. All the stuff you'd expect. I guess it had a Super Nintendo release. It had a Genesis release.
Really? I wasn't aware of the Super Nintendo version. I wonder if that only came out in the UK.
Let me see exactly. I've got a full list here of what got released. It was really wacky. I couldn't believe the amount of things. Here we go. Okay, Amiga CD32, the Atari ST, DOS, the Archimedes.
There it is again.
Atari, Jaguar, the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy Color.
All right.
This would be a great portable game, I think.
Yeah. Aside from the extremely small characters on an extremely small screen.
That's true. Well, something could be done.
Yeah.
But the guys, they were the aces of 16-bit games. They unfortunately, 16-bit games went away at some point. Eventually, they were picked up by I think it was Codemasters that picked them up finally, and they no longer exist as they were. They did try to release a Sensible Soccer comeback on the PlayStation in 3D. I think that was, and it pretty much was a no dice. I think we even mentioned that briefly when we talked about soccer games.
Right.
But these guys on the Amiga, they were hitting home runs left and right, and this was a good offering. Bo, what were your first impressions when you fired this thing up? Since now you had or had not played this before?
Well, this is one of the few games that I had played before.
Really?
I had this on my very first PC, which was an old Pentium 1. And it was a special version it must have been a later version because it actually had a rendered cutscene intro that had very early 3D rendering. It was really funny, actually. I still remember it was probably 1996 or 1997 when I got it, and I played it on there. It played pretty much like I remembered it. When I first started thinking about this game, I was like, well, from what I remember, it's kind of like, StarCraft or something like that, but the direct control you have over the shooting aspect of it really makes it stand apart from a lot of other real-time strategy games.
Yes, you know what it reminded me of? Now, keep in mind, I've never played it. This was literally the first time I've played it. Part of it, in some ways, the control reminded me of like a Diablo type deal.
Right.
And it's funny, I don't like Diablo for that controls, but in this game, it worked for me. The control scheme worked. And in parts of it reminded me, this is going to sound like a ludicrous comparison, but the fact that you could have your guys running one way or another while you were shooting, it's sort of like Robotron-y type feel. I mean, you could have your guys shoot wherever you wanted while they were moving in the opposite direction. You could have a nice retreat as you were running off. It made a big difference.
The bullets move slow enough that you can get out of the way. I mean, they move so ridiculously slow, that it's almost comical. But you've got to do that, or otherwise you wouldn't have really much of a game. Because you could just kind of point and click at whatever enemies and that's one of the things. I guess the Diablo comparison is apt. That's probably, it was a direct. Games like Diablo are a direct descendant of Cannon Fodder.
Yeah, I mean, really, you could see it. And one thing you've got to give these guys credit on. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I always thought this was sort of a strategy game or RTS, something like that, which it's not really,
it's not,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, but the control scheme is quite brilliant. It's a mouse with 2 buttons. That's it, pretty much. I mean, that's what you can hit pause. That's pretty much it. The fact that you can, when I first, of course, I jumped into it with no instructions and I just dropped it, throw it, and it's easy to start. I thought the difficulty ramped up pretty well. Now I got to a point where I was just getting stymied, but for a new person who had just started playing it, I felt like I was progressing at a good pace. And the fact that you can use the buttons to do all the weapon stuff. Presumably the vehicle stuff, which I didn't get that far, but it works, and it's precise and perfect for the Amiga or your Atari ST or your DOS. You were talking about having this for Windows, or for your PC. I actually read a review of this from '94, and it was I was just thinking about it when you were talking about having it played on a Pentium, because the fellow that reviewed it said that it ran okay on his 386 SX. He's like, but it stuttered a little bit, but when he played it on his 486 66, it ran like a dream. So that puts it into perspective of what PC users were using. And on the Amiga, of course, it's silky smooth. You don't have any problems.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. And this was I remember it being a CD-ROM game, and so it was kind of a prerequisite that if you put out a new CD-ROM version of a game, you had to have some sort of full motion video or a rendered thing, at the beginning, to justify the expense of buying it on that medium. So there's 23 missions in this game, and they're divided into 72 levels. You're going through the jungle, snow, and the desert. You've got vehicles. You've got you can go through rivers, quicksand.
Yes, that was quite a start when I first jumped into that.
There's traps that you've got to avoid.
That was quite a start when I first stumbled into one of those.
You've also got to avoid blowing yourself up, which happened to me often.
Yes, especially in moments of panic.
Right.
I would point blank throw a grenade, for example. That was another one of my favorite tactics. But yes, or blow up an ammo pack. That was bad.
And that's really where the strategy part of the game lies. Is you want to position your troops in an area where you can shoot at the enemy, or you can accomplish your objective without firing errant shots into explosive things. And so,
the way they've got the map set up is actually quite clever. The game scrolls. There are definite borders to where the screen stops scrolling, but pretty much you can go anywhere you want within those borders. It's that if it's a traversable piece of terrain. Like I said, the quicksand, I like that. Those are the little touches that add little nuances that make it interesting. The fact that I know the first level where you have a tripwire, the bad guys have cunningly put it on the inside track around quicksand. And that's very clever. Of course, I went right into it and blew up. Excuse me. I did a little looking on this thing. The production of this game actually began in early '91. So they started this thing several years before it came out. And then they got hung up on the Genesis conversion of it. That's what delayed it a little bit. It had been part of a 4-deal game with another publisher, which got liquidated after the fellow that owned it died. Unfortunate. Mm-hmm. But these guys were so confident in what they were doing, they just went ahead and finished it without a publisher, basically. And then, sure enough, Virgin rolled in, and they thought it would be a surefire hit. They were right, of course. And Virgin did this one for them. So it was a game that they were converting pretty much, it looks like, right out of the gate. So I guess when they built this from the ground up, they knew what they were doing. Now, I have not played any console versions of this. It seems like that'd be kind of a trial without a mouse.
Yeah, I wonder if they, if they converted it into more of a dual joystick or Robotron type thing where the D-pad move your guys and you fire using the arrow or the buttons on the other side of the controller. It might be cool to check that out on an emulator just to see.
Yeah, I agree.
The release of this game was met with some degree of controversy. The game was designed as kind of a somber, actually, reflection on war. There are some things that happen in this game that happen in very few war games. For example, each of your players is named. Each of your men are named. And when they die, you see their gravestones appear on a hill as more and more troops line up to go and fight for you.
Which is an awesome touch, I thought.
Yeah. And so the designers of the game wanted to make a fun game, but they also wanted to make a game in which, you realize that in war, people actually do die. Now, once you start playing the game and you're having fun, I didn't find myself being too reflective about it because after all it is, it's a very abstract representation of that stuff. But it was good that they were trying to make people think about that. One of the most controversial things about the game was the use of the poppy as the logo.
Yeah.
And so I guess there's a special British agency, this is where my research becomes a little bit less secure, that kind of controls the use of the poppy because of its role in Remembrance Day. And they were against the game, but it from the way that the developers talked about it is that those people had not played the game. They it's the same old story that you always hear where people react to something in a negative way, not knowing enough about it. However, that said, the game reviewed incredibly. It got very high marks in most of the magazines. It was declared Game of the Year. CU Amiga wrote, "Cannon fodder is the best thing since gunpowder. It's bloody brilliant. It's better than sex." I don't know if I would go quite that far, but they really liked the game. The theme tune, the theme song, probably I can't think of a theme song that's better, on a as far as, you start up a game and you hear this tune,
it's very really appropriate.
Yeah, it's very appropriate. It reminded me of Madness or, one of those, 80s reggae British groups. Let's see. What else do I have here? Rock, Paper, Shotgun, actually, they rated the theme tune as the best ever in a video game. And Amiga Format said that the sales figures topped over 100,000, and that was probably not including, the rest of the other ports.
Yeah.
So
touching back on the controversy, this game, it's a kind of a bloody game. You could shoot a guy and they don't die. They just lay there and bleed and scream. Mm-hmm. Their bodies float down the river, stuff like that. In fact, I was flipping through the owner's manual and it said, do these guys a favor and put them out of their misery. It's all tongue in cheek. But I really thought that tacking on there's because after you complete their missions are broken up into phases. And after you complete a mission, there's the poppies come up and there's a remembrance screen and it lists the casualties. And then it shows a couple rolling hills, and there's with all these cemetery graves that where everybody's been killed. Mm-hmm. And I was playing this with my buddy, and I was showing him this, and it was what an odd thing to do I think in their own way that does work. I mean, really.
And especially the contrast of having the rolling hills with the gravestones, and then your line of recruits lining up to be the next to be shot. Right next to it, right next to where that
is
was.
Because you have a never. Well, it does end, but it's a line of recruits that come down through the hills and stand in line waiting for their turn to go out and get slaughtered. It somehow works.
Yeah.
We were just. I'm sure by now this is old news, but Lemmy from Motorhead passed away. I think it was yesterday.
And Meadowlark Lemon.
Yeah, and Meadowlark Lemon. But I was telling my buddy about the Motorhead album 1916, which I don't know if you ever heard. And it's got a song on it that talks about these guys signing up to go into World War I. Right, and it's a very somber song for Motorhead. It's just Lemmy singing. There's very little instrumentation, and it was such a senseless war. And the way people just got killed in these trenches. It was just horrible. And that song and that theme kept running through my head while I was playing this. So maybe I was in a more somber mood.
Yeah.
I can understand how people could look at this and think it was controversial or pro-war. But really, I thought they did more than enough to make it, to ground you.
Oh, yeah. And there's nothing, when you play this game, people die. You're not playing. It's not like Call of Duty where you're the invincible hero, that can run right through it and kill. I mean, you're an overlord that's controlling this cannon fodder, know, and people are going to get mowed down, and it's one-hit kills.
Yeah. It reminded me of if you've ever seen Blackadder season 4, the World War I season, where it's like Colonel Melchick wants to move his drinks table 20 feet closer to Germany, and so he sends out the boys. And these missions, you'd go do them, and you had no idea what they were for. I mean, really, it's like blow everyone away, blow up their houses. Mm-hmm. Okay, go blow up these jungle villages. Well, okay, you don't know why you're doing it. That's war for the most part, but overall. Boy, I gotta tell you, I was blown away with this one. This is one of the most fun games I've played for a long time, and I couldn't stop playing it. It's challenging. There's a certain Lemmings-y type. I mean, the gameplay is totally different, but just once you try one more level, I gotta get past this one level. It's clever, and I really enjoyed it. And like I said, the remembrance part I thought was amusing. Wings does something similar when your pilots get killed. You know who's been killed. They get crossed off the board, and it makes you think, oh, man, I just lost so-and-so. So they tried to put a little bit of that in there without gumming it up. On the flip side, if you watch the opening credits, it shows all the people that worked on the game in uniforms. They all look...
Looks like Hogan's Heroes.
There's an Elvis. There's a Sergeant Bilko. Something else I found out through looking around, they actually made a music video for the song.
Really?
Yeah. They spent 500 quid on it, or 500 pounds. Yeah, 500 pounds, and they shot it in a day. I don't know if it's available anywhere. I didn't get a chance to look, but that might be entertaining. It's all these guys in their uniforms acting like idiots.
Yeah, if I find that, I'll throw that up on the blog.
But the song was well received. I read in one place they had talked about this song charting somewhere.
Really?
Now I can't confirm it. I know that there's a fleshed out version of the song that's longer. I don't know if it's got more. I mean, obviously in this one it's just basically the same thing over and over. Then they kind of mix it up. But if anyone knows that, drop us a line. If anyone has the album, that would be great. If that exists, if there's a single something floating around somewhere,
I'm sure there is
that you could download. Overall, I really enjoyed the game. I'm looking forward to getting to the later levels. I watched some video and saw helicopters and tanks, and I just got finished with the bazookas, and that's pretty much where I couldn't get past. So it's a work in progress. But I give it 2 enthusiastic thumbs up.
Yeah, the only thing that could make this game better is if they included a split screen 2-player mode.
Do you know now I've obviously not played the sequels. I didn't look at the sequels. Do you know if they ever included a 2-player?
I would be surprised if they didn't. At least one of the incarnations. I didn't look either. I just played the main game. But that if they would have had that, it would have been almost perfect. So
well, tune in sometime in the near future. Maybe we'll have a go at Cannon Fodder 2.
Yeah,
which absolutely. By the way, I did my usual eBay lookup on this. This is a pretty common game, and so I thought, well, they sold so many of these, this should be a pretty easy one to get hold of. But it was, it wasn't. I've seen pictures of a copy of this with the poppy on the front, just like the logo that comes up. I couldn't find any for sale. The only ones I saw were the camouflaged box, with the kind of yellow, it's wackier looking. The discs for this you can get all day long, just the discs. You're looking about $10 or under American. The big box you're looking $15 to $20 American for that one. And excuse me, I will say I found a lot more Cannon Fodder 2s than I did Cannon Fodder 1s. So I don't know what that means. Maybe they're rare. I don't know. But at least in the past couple months on eBay, we haven't seen too many of them come up. So,
well, I guess that's about all I've got. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Do you remember how far you got?
Not very far. I think I might have made it to Mission 4.
I got to Mission 5, Phase 2.
Okay.
And Phase 1 hurt me. Really, I mean, I was through. It took me a while at the beginning to understand how to obtain the grenades, and then how to use them wasn't so hard because I blew myself up. But they're on Mission 5, Phase 1. There are these guys at the end with these rocket launchers, and they're cunningly placed, and these things come at you, and you have to dodge them quick. That threw me. It took me a little while to get past that one, but I managed to do that today and get to the second phase. So I'm looking forward to tackling the second phase and moving on to the cooler stuff because I know there's a lot of other weapons and stuff, and I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. We'll definitely give it a shot here on the live stream coming up next. So I'd like to thank our sponsors before we go. O'Brien's Retro and Vintage and Brent Dowdy. As always, if you'd like to sponsor the show, you can look us up at patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We are using some of our Patreon money. I hope that our sound quality is better this week. We have a new blue snowball mic with some pop filters. So
it's very snazzy.
Yeah, hopefully our sound quality is a little bit better, and we're just going to try and improve things as best as we can.
We're loud.
Yeah. So
it's passion boat.
That's right. All right, Aaron, what are we going to play next week?
Blood Money.
All right. So tune in for that next week. Watch all of our videos that we're going to put up. We've got a lot of them.
And a whole lot more coming.
Yeah. And so until then,
adios.